howdy pioneers, and welcome back to our journey to find out what is the maximum limit of spaghetti that we can shove in our mouths until we lose all sense of sanity. You see, currently we are actually on a journey to find out what is the maximum limit of Ficsit coupon points you can earn per minute in Satisfactory. But when your two friends work at a spaghetti factory, oh, you know the spaghetti is going to be flying. So first of all, I want to give a huge thanks to everyone who gave us a smackerel of subscription and commented below. Keep them coming, and obviously we will keep the videos rolling. We were absolutely floored by the reaction we got last time. So we want to do our best to deliver you content that's respectful of your time, funny, educational, and entertaining. So when we last left our adventures, we were inches away from phase 3. And boy, oh boy, I can honestly tell you, we blasted past that milestone with ease. But before I go any further, I know that you are all super duper curious. Where is our Ficsit coupon rate at? Well, if you remember last time, we sat at about 14,516 coupon points per minute. But now our coupon juice is a-flowing, and we're cruising at about an altitude of approximately 26,000 points a minute. Now, if you wanted to ask me, Pear, where does this coupon juice exactly come from? I would answer by stating I honestly don't really know. A lot of it comes from a lot of places. Some of the sources have been kept from previous iterations of our map, while others have been depreciated and some new sources have been developed. So the point rate actually does fluctuate up and down quite a bit. So 26,000 is typically where I see the machine tells us, but it can actually vary wildly due to the amount of sources that we use for points. So it's actually really impossible to give you a proper estimate for now. So 26,000 is where we're going to see the speed of our point counter currently. One major source for our coupon juice actually came in the form of our newly built mall. We aptly dubbed this mall Lexmart. So here's the man, the myth, the legend, Lex, to tell you all about his creation.
So we started in the southern end of the map, but we need to use the whole map. So one of the problems we needed to solve was to move our thinking to a much more central location. And then a second, somewhat related problem was that as we built up this giant spaghetti factory, the items were being produced all over the place, and we needed to be able to get the things we were going to need. So the solution to this was what we ended up making, which is our mall, which C-Pair lovingly calls Lexmart. The plan for the mall was borrowed from something a couple of my friends put together, and I thought was a pretty nifty little way to do things. And so the basic idea is that the mall starts really at the bottom, where there are 3 belts that are inputted and go up a set of conveyors into the receiving hall. The receiving hall is designed to take the inputs from these 3 belts and send them through a series of programmable splitters. These will divide them into 4 different lines of 3 belts. Each belt works the same way. Along the belt are a series of smart splitters, which will send one specific item into a merger, and that merger will then send it into the container that it belongs in. If there's any overflow, or if it's not the right item, it moves up to the line, where at the end of the line it'll go into a buffer, and those buffers will then go into a sink. The actual items are available in the central hall, which consists of a series of containers on 2 sides, which contain around 40 of the items that we would need in a build gun. The mall itself was put way up top, pretty close to our aluminum production in the bamboo fields, with a nice little view of the area near the lake forest. It's also fairly central to the rest of the map, so it was a nice spot. The next thing to do, of course, was to actually move the hub. So the hub was placed just a little bit south of the mall in its own little room, and the idea is that if you die and you need to get parts, well, you could just go to the mall and get them. And additionally, and one of my favorite parts, the hub now has a little trophy room for all the little trophies we're going to be accumulating.
Thanks, Lex. Now, you might be asking yourself, where did we get all the power to power this construction? But since we are on the cutting edge of hitting Mark III miners by the time we upload this video update, there isn't much that can be done in terms of upgrading our coal power lake. So we hadn't touched that since the last time we looked at it. But we did add a minor addition of 6 fuel generators to our oil refinery to the west. to which 5 of them actually were overclocked to work at about 250%, giving us about 375 megawatts each, making this entire setup give us approximately just above 2 gigawatts of power. Now, for this next explanation, I think it's actually best if we open up our current map. Now, as you can see, the greenish lines represent power poles. Now, as this was done before Update 8 went into early access, so you can see the spiderweb of power poles instead of a massive new power lines that we've been given. Now, there are 3 reasons for the spiderweb, which I will get into. But the first reason is that we wanted to exploit all the geothermal vents in the game to get us some more power. So with a total of 3 impure, 9 normal, and 6 pure nodes, we were able to crank out an approximate average of about 4.5 gigawatts of power to be used for our purposes. And then finally, our last upgrade was actually an additional 12 fuel generators to the already built 12 fuel gens, which give us an additional 1.8 gigawatts of power. Now, our future endeavor is to start up a clean nuclear facility, which will get us to close the maximum amount of power that we can actually pop out. This kind of brings me to a point of order here. If you look at what we do and you're like, wow, I wonder what kind of plan they have next. We honestly are flying blind here. We encounter an issue and we build a solution for it. So while we know that nuclear obviously is the next step, our power generation will be one of our biggest limitations towards our goal. So it's actually really tough to say if all our power is going to come from nuclear and geothermal, or if there will be other sources that we can utilize. It actually really all hinges on what we need in the moment. Now, turning back to the map, as I said, we would come back to it and you can see that we can see all of it. And this is because the next use for this spider web of power poles was actually to connect radar to the entire map. If we wanted to plan out effectively, we needed to see the whole map and all the resources that we could exploit to reach our goals. And then finally, actually the last reason that we had this spider web the way it was because that we unlocked all the hard drive upgrades for our base. So now we sat with a lot more inventory space and all of the optional recipes unlocked. Because as we are discovering even now, some of the recipes are better than others, and so we want to keep our options open. So I actually just want to give a big shout out to Lex for literally keeping the lights on and single-handedly going on an Easter egg hunt to find all the hard drives and get our radar set up. I actually remember at one point I'd be like working on something and then I would just see Lex in some far-flung corner of the map. And when asked what he was doing, he was like getting hard drives. And as I said before, Lex has the most experience than any of us in this game. So when I thought he said he was getting hard drives, I actually didn't really expect it to be this map-wide scavenger hunt, but that's what it turned out to be. So now I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, because while a lot of the upgrades to our power and recipes were being done, after we hit tier 4, we started unlocking tier 3 techs. And this included one major addition in the form of aluminum. So I got to planning on how we would harness this new resource. Essentially what I did was I started to truck in all the bauxite nodes that were on the western part of the map to one centralized location where they could then be shipped off to a centralized bauxite processing facility. This was a facility of Dez's design that soon turned into a collaboration of all 3 of us as we incrementally upgraded it over time. If you have a keen eye, you can actually see that the facility isn't even actually close to full operational status yet. And that has to do with a few factors, but one of the big factors is simply that we built this factory to be future-proof. We sat down with our spreadsheets and calculated how much refining we would need to get done, and then Dez concocted a facility that could tessellate to provide us with that refining power. So what you see now is a very small fraction of what this facility will actually look like. Currently, this facility only utilizes 4 refiners to provide us enough alumina solution for our needs. So what are those needs? Well, I'm glad you asked. As I said before, we are very much a logic-based group. We see a need and we fulfill it. So when we found out that a lot of the tier 3 techs would need aluminum, we also realized that a lot of the advanced parts also needed aluminum, but we were really only building them in our main factory in the south. So I had the pleasure of shipping this aluminum all the way back to our main base in the south. Now, as you can see, we use the aluminum combined with copper to produce casing and sheets to feed this chunky boy. Now, if you remember from last time, I built the start of this factory that built computers. Now, an obvious next step for these computers would be supercomputers, which is exactly where they went next. But on top of that, we also needed high-speed connectors and AI limiters, which I actually exploited another Caterium node to get all that quick wire I needed. But actually, it really still wasn't enough. But with all the high-speed connectors and AI limiters, I was able to combine all these components to get supercomputers. However, I still had to turn off half the supercomputer manufacturing, as we still don't have enough quick wire to satiate this factory's needs. Now, where the aluminum fits into all of this is we actually needed radio control units for one of the tiers of tech. So I combined crystal oscillators with the computers with the aluminum casing to get the radio control units that I needed. But if you think that the fun ends there, oh no, my dear pioneer, because one of the techs required electromagnetic control rods, which were built using the AI limiters and sators. Now, you might look at that sator requirement and think, oh, this is simple. However, I required a domino chain-like upgrade to many facilities. The need to get electromagnetic control rods was even more pressing as we found out that these rods would be used for our clean nuclear processing. So now let's detail how the dominoes fell. It all started when I looked at our sator production and I realized that we simply didn't even come close to having enough to meet our demand. So I took a step back and then another step back to realize that our copper production actually wasn't enough and that we needed a lot more copper ore coming into Dez's factory to produce the sators that we needed. So I actually exploited these 3 copper nodes to the northeast of the factory and brought them back into the main copper factory. After expanding our copper wire production, I realized actually fairly quickly that our steel pipe production could also use an upgrade. So I exploited 2 iron nodes and 1 coal node to the east of our factory and essentially bolstered our steel production for both steel pipes and steel beams. The nice thing about getting all these smart splitters is that the fact that we can actually build these dirty lines that essentially truck 2 different products on the same line. It saves on time and space, but it still gets the main job done. So with the steel and copper wire bolstered, I was now able to increase our sator production to a level that was needed to produce the electromagnetic control rods. Now, I know that when I was doing a camera pan of the alumina line, you probably noticed this 5-stack of conveyors. This is sort of a patch job that Lex did to get us our fused frames. Because if you were to ask us what one of our biggest limiting factors is right now, it would be fused frames, which are a key ingredient in the production of Mark III miners. So these 5 lanes actually go all the way down to a simple factory that pops out enough fused frames for our Mark III miner needs, until that we can get something more official cooked up. And that is actually where I come in. Now, I'd say right now that we are at a crossroads in terms of what we do next. So I feel that we are setting up the infrastructure to get ready to increase our power and increase our resource burn towards that goal. While we do that, fused frames are a key ingredient towards said goal. So a fun little secret that we actually often don't talk about while we show you these little videos is that there's actually a lot of work in progress stuff that we don't show you going on. And because it's not really super exciting, we don't show it off typically. However, you guys asked for more detailed videos, so if you want to follow these stairs, you can see these coal nodes that I've started to exploit. And this is all leading to what you see here. While nothing pretty right now, it's actually hopefully going to be the future site for one of our main fused frame production facilities. Now, this is an extreme work in progress and actually might not even happen, or it might happen and then get torn down. What you don't see when we make these videos is the constant iterations that we go through on these projects sometimes. And for this, it's already went through one iteration, but hopefully this is where the factory will be built. So I think I'll wrap it up for this update. As you can see, we have been quite busy, but I will admit that life for some of us has gotten a bit more hectic. So if you don't see a massive update you were hoping for, don't worry, we're still chugging along. We aren't full-time YouTubers and we treat this as a project all three of us work on. So let's talk about the predictions for next time. Next time, we obviously hope to have an answer for what our end goal will be and how we are going to achieve it. I suspect that we're going to have some iteration of our nuclear plant up and running, and that we'll have increased the production of everything in some tangible fashion. We know that we're most likely aiming for one of the higher tier products to produce on a massive scale, but we have actually yet to determine what that might be. So stay tuned for next time as we get some answers for you. And thanks for watching.